What is going on, everybody? It's your hostess with the mostest on our 100 and whatever the heck episode of Form Check Friday. Now, this is the series where we take viewer submitted videos sent into the email formcheckfriday@gmail.com, and we use a random number generator, we dig through, and we pick some good ones to try to take a look at, to try to use as an example for things like queuing and trying to become more efficient at the lifts. The idea here is that you can look at some of these videos, hopefully identify some mistakes that you're maybe making yourself, and use this to the betterment of your powerlifting career. So again, if you're interested interested in submitting to Form Check Friday, go ahead and submit those videos to formcheckfriday@gmail.com. And without further ado, we're gonna get right to it here. So we have our first one coming from Abraham, and Abraham says, "Hi there, I sent you a video of an easy set of sumo deadlifts. I know that I must put my hip a little higher, but I don't know why I can't, he says. He doesn't seem to be able to do that. So let's take a look here and figure out what's going on with Abraham's deadlift. Monitor should not be on right now. All right, there we go. So let's see what's going on here, Abraham. So we're definitely seeing a little bit of hip rise as he initiates the lift. And I don't think that you necessarily need to start with your hips higher. I think this is a pretty okay position, but I want you to put more tension, put more emphasis on the quads and on knee extension to start the pull. What's happening here is we're allowing those hips to rise up because of a lack of patience off the floor. Stick with the weight, be a little tighter. That first rep actually honestly wasn't that bad. The second one is where we really start to see a little more of that hip shift. Now, if you did want to try starting with a bit of a higher hip position, then it's not about putting your hips up more, it's about pushing your hips back more, which is in turn gonna allow the knees to travel back more, giving you a little bit more of a vertical shin angle, which in the long run could be a good thing too. With most of the critiques that I give here, it's gonna be a sort of guided trial and error. We're trying to give you guys and gals some ideas, some concepts, some things to think about and things to try. So right now, obviously, we're starting in what looks like a really great position, but every rep we're seeing a big shift back. Now, if you brought your knees back to start off with, push the butt back behind you, got that last little bit of extension there, I think that might go a long ways for you, as well as just being more patient off the floor. I feel like anytime we see too much shift off the floor, it's a lack of patience. We're kind of not sticking with the plan, and the plan is to essentially start the lift where you set yourself. So hopefully some of that clicks for you and makes some sense. Either be more patient and maintain this position off the floor, or learn to pull the slack in by pulling yourself back more. It's not about higher hips necessarily, it's more about hips back further behind the bar. And hopefully that makes sense for you. We have another submission, believe it or not. And this one comes from Dan. So Dan says, first off, thank you so much for all you're doing. We really appreciate it. He says he apologizes the video is not in landscape format. That's okay. Didn't give any instructions apart from trying to keep the bar centered in the video. Okay, so he had somebody else film this for him is what he's saying. This video is of me doing a squat triple at 7.5 with 132.5 and hit a PR at 8 just after this was shot. So for a long time, he said his squat has been plateauing or progressing very slowly and he needs help to assess if the issue is programming, technique, or just mental. So he says he's been back and front squatting with relatively high frequency for a while. Never had a good lifter near me to give me technique or programming pointers. Self-taught, and all I know is thanks to the internet and guys like you, Mike T, and the guys at Juggernaut and Ben Pollock. Thanks for taking the time and best wishes. All right, let's pull up Dan's squat here. Let's see here, Dan, what do we got going on, buddy? So first off, super rushed, like aggressive unrack. So when we pick up the bar, your feet are further back than would be ideal, right? When we pick up the bar, when we unrack the bar, I want you to get under there, get tight into the bar, get braced into the bar like you're already in a squat. We want to think about the unrack being like locking out a max squat. So every time the back is locked in, we're taking our time to brace the same way we would before a rep. We're getting our hips in under the bar. We're standing it up with the quads out of the rack. This is less than ideal. We're super shaky still and kind of not tight as you unrack the bar. Also, I'm not sure what was with there's like a weird double dip thing there, which I would probably try to minimize. So instead of bouncing before you descend, just break at the hips a little bit. So push your butt back a little bit and just go into the squat. If you need to, you can smooth out this initial transition and try to, like the dip thing is just really weird. I don't think I've known anyone to do that. And also if you do that in competition, you're probably gonna get red lighted for up and down on the bar. So if you can just start from here, right? And see your hips are a little bit further back than when you're standing up. So I think one of the key things here is gonna be just to push your hips back a tiny bit. So we end up in this position where you end up after the dip, right? You're clearly more comfortable, feeling a little bit more loaded up and a little bit more ready to squat with the hips just a tiny bit further back in a little bit more flexion. So to start with, instead of dipping and kind of dancing around like that, just push your butt back and sit into your squat. Also, I would like to see a little bit more control into the bottom. We're kind of coming down to, like, even there is probably good to come back up, but we're going quite a bit deeper, really bottoming out, which generally signifies to me that we're getting quite loose in the bottom. If you trim that depth, if you maintain more control and tightness, then you're gonna end up with a little bit of a better squat, I would think. Aside from that, I can't really see what's going on with your upper back or your shoulders or anything like that, but the big thing is gonna be ditch the dip, get tighter out of the rack. Like there's a lot of kind of juking and jiving before the unrack. Treat it like a squat. Don't do the dip, just push your hips back and go. And lastly, let's try and cut that depth a little higher for the sake of being tighter into your bottom position, not just loosening up and kind of falling into the bottom position. Hopefully that makes sense, buddy. All right, so we got a few more of these to go. Our next one comes from Patrick Castillo. Patrick's from Fort McMurray, Alberta. Huzzah, Alberta. Just wanted to get some pointers on how to improve his sumo deadlift. Excuse me. He says his max is 315 and he did 225 for 5 sets of 3 reps. Wants to compete in powerlifting but doesn't have professional training. He says his posture and movements are just based on YouTube videos, which is fine. Honestly, I think that's where a lot of people learn, and that's part of why we do this series, is so that people are getting good information. So far, my posture is not giving me any issues whatsoever, but I always feel there's something wrong with my lifting. I'd appreciate it if you could point it out and give me some recommendations on how to improve them. All right, Patrick. Let us take a look here. So Patrick, I think, is a relatively new sumo deadlifter. Wow, dude. This guy watches the right YouTube videos, am I right? Really, really good, man. Like, great starting position, really good leverage. There isn't much change between start position and where the bar comes off the floor. We're seeing maybe a tiny little bit of the hips coming back, so you could maybe pull yourself back into more of this position as opposed to sitting quite so far down. But all told, like, holding back angle excellently, working with a lot of sort of knee extension, getting that good push off the floor. A lot of really, really good things happening. So my critiques, criticisms, recommendations are quite limited for you. The one thing I would maybe try is just pulling into a bit of a hips higher position. Ooh, excuse me. Instead of sitting all the way down. See how we kind of shift before the weight comes off into the bar? Try to pull yourself into that position instead of that position. But you might be better off starting here and having that little bit of a shift too. You might not be able to just create that position. So honestly, man, looks really, really good. I think it's a fine example of what you should be doing in the sumo deadlift. So not a lot in the way of suggestions or things to not do to try again. So next one comes from Kevin. Now Kevin says he's new to the channel, binging several videos at a time. All right, it's the good stuff. Attached 2 bench press videos, and he would love us to check out. One is a 1RM at 225 after a failed rep at 235, too much bounce off the chest. The other one is 205 for a double, which is the video I've selected here. He's edited the videos to get them in landscape format for us and hopes that helped. That's very kind of you. Thank you, Kevin. Some context. He's 26, 5'10", 175 pounds, played football. Always taught to bounce the bar off his chest. Bench has been his weakest lift by far, and had obviously the instilled habit of bouncing it off his chest. 2 to 3 years getting into more powerlifting style training. Plans on doing a meet in 2019. Also worth noting, he had a minor injury in his elbow. Wasn't able to achieve full lockout. Can't really notice it, and there's no pain, just pointing it out. The steps he's taken to improve his bench so far is pause bench, increase bench frequency. Wants to know if the pause is long enough, things to tweak, and if you get white lights in a meet. Also be curious to know my elbow injury would affect bench judging at a meet. His question here is, should I show and tell the judges I physically can't achieve full lockout on that arm? No, you do not. There used to be a rule where the judge could give some lenience if you approached them and showed them and told them about it. But then I saw Ryan Stinn, I believe he has some really bad elbow problems, and went up to a judge, at least I think it was Ryan, somebody went up to a judge anyways, and pointed it out to the head judge before the lift. And the head judge was like, perfect, now I'm just gonna red light the hell out of you on every lift. And that was not a successful tactic. So get it as straight as you can get it, and hope that it's enough. So here's Kevin's bench. Let's take a look. So it's tough to say without too much of the setup in here, right? Not really sure what his setup looks like, or how we're ending up in this position. To me, this position looks quite flat. I think that we're lacking a fair bit of leg drive. I think we're lacking some scapular depression or even retraction. It's hard to draw retractions like back in that way, and depression is down his back, right? However, he's doing a good job of staying nice and tight out of the rack. We can see as he unracks, if we watch here, during the unrack, we're not losing position in the shoulders, or at least not very much. I do think, however, we could really cue that chest up to the bar more. We could really pull those shoulders into better position and get more leg drive. So the big thing with leg drive, the way I coach it anyways, is to squeeze the glutes and try to use your legs like you're pushing yourself backwards, wheeling yourself backwards on a wheelie chair. And think about just that knee extension driving you up the bench. That, I think, is going to help you create, you'll probably take at least, an inch or so off your range of motion, and try to, use that to keep your shoulders from getting into this position that they're in the bottom, right? So we can see as he touches, he relaxes in the upper back, and these elbows track backwards that way a little bit. So just watch the elbows in these few frames here. We come in, touch, and then notice how the elbows shift back before he presses. That's something I would try to address, because that means we're loosening, we're losing tension. And you can just see that lack of maintenance of that external rotation. So when the elbows are just slightly in front, it allows us to drive back off the chest. When the elbows get loose and out behind and we push, a lot of times that's going to push the bar out away from where we want it to go. So let's note this bar path here and see. So he actually turns his leg drive on here and helps to get the bar moving backwards. but we're still very straight up and down here. And I think, again, like for the first little bit off the chest, if we maintained almost a tiny bit more tuck, it would allow us to more effectively and efficiently press the bar back. So let's see the second one here, same thing. Elbows end up coming out a little bit. And then off the chest, we're really fighting to get the bar back, but it doesn't actually come back as well. It's a lot more straight up and then back in the mid-range, the midpoint of the press. So a couple things about bar path. Work on your leg drive a little bit, and let's try to create a little bit more arch or a little bit better sort of leg drive combined with really trying to reach your chest up to that bar. All right, and we have one more left. This one's from a guy named William, who I realized is actually Billy. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Billy Bueller? Bueller? And he says, first time in the suit. So this was obviously a long time ago because I actually competed with Billy at Nationals. I was a guest on his podcast not long ago. So I think it's called Power Talk. Sorry if I'm messing that up, Billy. But you can go check it out and listen to him and I chat a little bit about equipped lifting. And this is equipped lifting. So he's got his straps down here. For those of you who don't know, this is a squat suit, and these things hanging here are straps that normally go up over the shoulders. So when your straps down, you don't get as much out of the suit because we're not getting as much sort of stretch or as much resistance from the suit rather throughout the trunk, where most of it is actually focused on the hips. He's also wearing knee wraps here. So he said one of the things that he critiqued in his email was that the walkout is too many steps and needs work. So we're up, we got 1, 2, 3, that's actually pretty okay. I'm not too worried about that, minimizing that much more than that. You know, I generally recommend a 3-step walkout. So what I recommend is this 1 step back, 2 step back, but by this point we should be even. And then the 3rd step should be adjusting for width. Whereas you can see Billy uses the 3rd step to bring this foot back a little bit more. Like that. Now let's get into the squat. So it looks like a good shelf position. Bar looks stable. Elbows are in a pretty good position in terms of their relation to the torso. Now let's see what his squat looks like. Really good initiation of the squat, especially in the suit. A lot of times people have a hard time sitting back into the squat because this suit wants to keep you straight, right? Like the suit is creating pressure this way, or rather this way, and wants to keep you just straight. So when you push back into the suit, that's how you get kilos out of it. That's how you use it properly. But a lot of people will try to sink straight down, pitch the knees super far forward, and then get stuck in the hole. So this is really good that he's sitting back like that. You can see we're getting a fair bit of like flexion in the trunk as he gets into the bottom. I think that's really inherent with straps down because like I said, you have all this tightness around the hips, but it only goes up to where the belt ties it off as opposed to going up to where the straps normally would be. And you can see I drew a little bunny. But yeah, so good job sitting back into the suit. I think, you know, working on maintaining that extension a little bit better, especially that was a better rep. But again, we're maybe starting to sacrifice depth with that extra tightness there. So honestly, a pretty proficient squat all in all. I would be quite happy with that as coach. I also just don't program a lot of straps down work. I find it's similar enough that it can kind of change how you approach the equipped squat, but different enough that you're not gonna get as much transference out of doing it that way. So 9 times out of 10 or 9.5 times out of 10, I'll just have my lifters in full gear or nothing. But a lot of very good lifters will swear by straps down work, and you know, different strokes for different folks, right? But Billy, I think the walkout looks pretty good. I think you're doing a good job of sitting into the suit. I think your depth is pretty good from this angle. And I think mechanically speaking, the squat is actually quite good. So hopefully a few of our viewers out there maybe didn't have an idea about equipped squatting or equipped lifting before, and hopefully that was an interesting or worthwhile bit of discussion. So again, if you want to submit for Form Check Friday, go ahead and send your submissions to formcheckfriday@gmail.com, as you would expect. And make sure to stay tuned for these every Friday. And if you're interested in this kind of content and you want to get your lifts looked at sooner rather than later, make sure to stop by twitch.tv/Calgary Barbell and come by our weekly live stream. We're actually streaming twice a week now, usually on Wednesdays and Fridays. So go ahead and pop by. We do user submitted videos separate for the live stream audience as they're submitted. And it's usually a really good time. So by the time this goes up, we'll be Twitch affiliates, which is kind of cool. And come on by, check it out, pop by, and we'll see you there. All right, take care, everybody. Till next time.